Well, hello and welcome to this, the Midweek Wednesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Allstrands. It is another smoky day in and around H.R.M. Not as bad as yesterday, but still that hint of wood fire or wildfire smoke emanating through the area. I know a lot of people that I spoke to yesterday said that it was pretty thick in their neighborhoods. Yesterday, I think I saw upwards of 20 or some odd calls to Halifax Fire yesterday, people smelling wood fire smoke and reporting it to the fire department. It certainly is. I think this is something we're going to have to be dealing with for the next little while as the battle continues against those wildfires in the Annapolis Valley. Some of the Nova Scotia crews out there, by the way, that have been on the fire since day one, getting some relief today. Well-earned rest, so to speak, as a team from Ontario comes into the area to spell them off. And I can't imagine how tired they are. Can you imagine? That work is hot, it's dirty, it's dangerous, and it's backbreaking. They're literally taking stump by stump and those big heavy hoses and spraying it in the water into the area. It's a huge thank you to everybody that's been working on that fire, both on the fire line and in support. I'm hearing stories of people stepping up and volunteering to help make sandwiches or do whatever is needed to help at that fire scene. And of course, have the people who've been evacuated in that part of the world in our minds and in our thoughts as that fire continues to burn. Expecting an update here in the next little bit from the Department of Natural Resources. And if they stick to the schedule that they have been sticking to as of late, we'll get a news conference around 2 o'clock to get the very latest information on that. I came across a story in preparation for today's show in the Herald, posted this morning, about the wildfire ban. And you know that I've been talking about it for the last couple of days. Well, it remains in effect. And apparently, according to this story, 35 people now have been charged for violating the woods ban. 25 of them have received that $25,000 fine for open fires during the fire ban. And the other 10 have been issued, at least according to this Chronicle Herald story, have been issued to people who have violated the woods ban and have gone for a walk or a drive or whatever into the woods since it has been banned. Back on August 5th, I think, was the day that they banned it all. According to the communications director at Natural Resources, and that's Adele Poirier, who's quoted in this article, to date, people charged have not yet paid the fine, but they have 2 months to voluntarily do that. Now, those charged are either required to plead guilty and pay the amount payable within 2 months or notify the court of an intention to appear in provincial court and plead not guilty. A person charged can also plead guilty and make a penalty submission in court. I'm assuming that has to do with finances and the ability to pay a $25,000 fine. So as we sit here today and as we speak, the fire ban, the woods ban is in effect, and it doesn't look, and I mean, things can change with the provincial government on a whim, but it doesn't look like that ban is going to be lifted at this point. With the long weekend in front of us, I know many of you will be disappointed that you won't be able to go out into the woods and enjoy the countryside. Again, as I've been saying all week, I urge the Premier to take a closer look at this. There are different counties in the province of Nova Scotia that have received different amounts of rain or in different situations, and I think it would probably be prudent to take a look at this by county as opposed to a broad-based ban, and hopefully the Premier is doing that. Disturbing news. Did you see this? You hear this on the news this morning? Disturbing news out of Newfoundland. Of course, they're dealing with wildfires very much like we are. In fact, much closer to the urban areas of St. John. One of those areas is Conception Bay. Now, apparently people are going into the evacuation zone there at Conception Bay, and they're looting people's homes. So what they're doing is people have evacuated because of the wildfire. They grab whatever they can, they get out. Now, people are circumventing the roadblocks that are keeping people out of that area and are actually breaking into people's homes and stealing their stuff because they're not home. Now, what kind of person does that? Right? I hope that the RCMP, and the story said that the RCMP will be stepping up patrols, and I know that they're keeping an eye on things here. It was one of the big worries when I spoke to people from Tantalon a couple years ago when people evacuated there because of that tragic wildfire, that they were worried about somebody getting into their property with nobody keeping an eye on it. But, I mean, really, what kind of low person does that? I hope that the RCMP keep an eye on these things. I hope over in Newfoundland that these step-up patrols catch these people. And I hope that they are prosecuted to the full extent of the law and publicly named so we can find out who this was. There is a special place in hell for somebody like that. I just don't understand why somebody would already, the situation is already terrible, and you're going to take advantage of people at their time of need and go in and take their television or their jewelry, whatever. It shouldn't, but it does surprise me. But I really and truly hope that we find out who these people were and that they are publicly named. Today is the Wednesday edition of the program. That means, of course, that we will at 11 o'clock be welcoming Dr. John Gillis into the show to join us to talk a little bit or to answer your medical-related questions. And that, of course, means that the open hour today will be moving off until 12 o'clock. So make the adjustment. I hope that you can still stick around and join us. We had some pretty good conversation yesterday surrounding some of the wage scales in HRM. $29.40 is the living wage, according to the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. You have to make $29.40 in order to be able to live in HRM. I get it that you can do it for less, and I know that some people reached out to me and said that they are doing it for less, but this gives you, that number gives you the ability, I'm not going to say to live comfortably, but to be able to live and have, I think she said 2 weeks of buffer should some kind of emergency happen, the exhaust fall off the car, or a medical emergency where you can't go to work, or those kind of things. But $29.40 an hour is what is required to live here. It goes back to what I was talking about, I think it was last week when I filled in for Todd last Wednesday, about how it is and where we've kind of gone wrong with the way that we live. It used to be that somebody that was working a service-related job, a job that may not make that $29.40 an hour, was still able to afford to live in the community where they worked. That is definitely not the case now. I heard some numbers yesterday that paramedics make under that, entry-level paramedics. And I also heard from people yesterday saying that, when apprentices are coming in out of school or off the street to build the buildings that we're living in, they're making less than that $29.40 an hour to be able to function. And I get the argument. I understand the argument that if we start paying people more, then the cost of goods is going to go up. And I don't suggest that jacking everybody's wage to $29.04, it's just over, what is it, $60,000 a year, is the solution. But we are living in an era that is unaffordable. Just think about your own situation right now, and if you didn't have access to credit, if you didn't have a credit line or a credit card or the ability to get a loan, could you function? Could you just be able to live in the current state that you're in without using any kind of extra money, any credit? I don't think many people can. And I know many of you are struggling to pay those bills. The school's right around the corner. The kids are going back to school on Tuesday, right? It's an expensive time of the year. What's the solution? I really don't know. But it certainly is something that we should think about, and it's certainly something that we're getting to that saturation point, as I call it. We're getting to that point where we're just not going to be able to. Something has to break, right? It's just we're outliving each other and we're outspending each other, and eventually that all has to come to a head, right? and hopefully it doesn't leave people in the wake. Might be something you want to talk about when we hit the open hour at noon today. Also, I'm very curious. We've been hearing a lot of talk as of late about, do you remember during the federal election campaign, the elbows up, the Wob Canoe came up with the elbows up, and then Prime Minister Carney took that and ran with it, ran a campaign on it. Now being accused of lowering the elbows because of his plan to reduce some of the tariffs on American goods. I think the quote I heard this morning was, it has been a sticking point with the Americans. Well, I tell you what, the tariffs that the Americans put on our goods is a sticking point. I don't see the President of the United States lowering that anytime soon. But all that being said, you still keeping your elbows up? I know there was a groundswell of support for that when it happened in January or February, whatever, when it was. People were going to the grocery store and they were looking for Made in Canada labels, and they were even if it costs a little bit more, they were buying Canadian products. They weren't buying American stuff. They were skipping the produce that came from the United States for places like in Mexico or in Europe or wherever this was, or Canada, where it was coming from. I know it's a little easier to do now with it being the time of the year that it is, and there's a lot of Nova Scotia produce in the grocery store. I was there yesterday, and there's lots of Nova Scotia options. But are you still keeping your elbows up? Are you still buying Canadian? Are you still avoiding travel to the United States? I know we're getting into that season where people are thinking about winter vacations. Are you still avoiding travel to the U.S. like you did in the past? We're seeing anecdotal information, at least, that some of the big tourist destinations, Orlando, Las Vegas, are seeing a drop of international tourists. Las Vegas reporting a drop of Canadian tourists in particular. I think they said from a faucet to a drip was the quote. Are you still keeping your elbows up? Or are you like, well, whatever, I'm just going to carry on with the way I'm doing it, or that jar of spaghetti sauce is $2 cheaper than the Canadian version, so I'm going to buy the American one. I'm very curious as to what your answer is. That could be something we talk about when we open up the telephone lines here after 12 o'clock today. Thank you to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass. Before I forget to thank her today, she does a fantastic job each and every day, and she keeps things running here, which in most days is not an easy thing to do. We are going to stop and take our first break here on the program today, but I mentioned back to school on Tuesday. There's a lot of consternation within the university community, particularly those that go to Dalhousie University today, as that strike by the Faculty Association, or the lockout, whatever the vernacular is that you're using on it, the bottom line is that the professors are on the sidewalk and they're not in the classroom. What does that mean for the student body? A conversation with the president of the Dalhousie Student Union, Maren Mealey, when we come back. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Hope you're having a fantastic Wednesday as we plow through this last week of quote-unquote summer, as we get into the Labor Day long weekend this weekend. And then, of course, on the other side of that is September and all of the fun and frivolity that is associated with that. I know there are many parents that are getting those last-minute shops in to get the new clothes and the school supplies for students that are in elementary school or middle school or high school. And I know that it can be that can be a challenge, to say the least. Not to mention the price of goods being on the rise. I hear that some parents are seeing prices that are much more expensive than last year, and some are blaming the tariffs with the United States. Also, we know that university students are making their way back into Halifax. It's a rather large cohort of people that come here every year. If you just look at the population numbers, somebody told me that if you collected all of the university students within HRM at Dal and at SMU and at the Mount and over at NASCAD and at the Theology Museum, that there's about, or university, not museum, my mistake. There's about 50,000 students that come here every year. So it's a large segment of the population, and I know that a good chunk of them today are a little concerned because they are walking into a situation or arriving to a situation that is not. There's a lot of questions, I'll say, because we really don't know what's going to happen at Dalhousie University. The faculty currently out on the sidewalk, drove by the campus yesterday, saw the DFA folks out there with bells and whistles, and they're walking the picket line. And that, of course, has concerned students, first-year students, of course, but those that are in their third or fourth year that are maybe looking to graduate this year, and with the prospect of a labor disruption lasting for an extended period of time, I know that there's a lot of consternation out there. We're very pleased to welcome into the program today to tell us a little bit about what it is, what's happening with the students on the ground. There is the Student Union Vice President over at Dalhousie. That's Maren Mealey. Maren, how are you?
Good. How about you?
I am well. I guess let's start there. Are the students coming to Halifax, or are they kind of hanging at home and doing a wait-and-see approach?
I think it depends on the students. The advice from the university has been for students to still come, and so residents move in. And orientation week, those things are still happening as usual. But, of course, you have some folks who are hesitant to come when they don't know how long the labor dispute's going to go on for. I think especially folks who are from the Maritimes, where it's easier to travel in. I think a lot of them are taking the wait-and-see approach.
So what are they telling you? Like what are the students that are showing up already telling you? Are they concerned they may lose their year or their semester?
Yeah, a lot of folks are concerned. I think a lot of people feel very frustrated that they're in the middle of a labor dispute that's not of their making. And so folks are frustrated. Folks are concerned as well about their classes. Folks are concerned about what an extended labor dispute looks like, whether that means they lose their fall reading week, whether that means they might lose an entire credit. Yeah, definitely hearing the frustration, the concern, and also just the uncertainty with people not knowing if they should make plans to travel, if they shouldn't, and how they're supposed to plan around this.
You mentioned earlier that the university is telling the students to come, so I'm assuming that all of the pre-begin of class things is happening. The students are moving into the residence or into their apartments, and that's all going ahead as normal.
Yeah, going ahead as normal. International student move-in started last week, and then domestic student and international student move-in continues tomorrow. And so that's all going ahead as normal. And at the DSU, we're continuing our orientation week activities, mainly because students will be on campus. We don't want to pretend that things are normal when they're not, but we think it's important to welcome students well, get them connected to services, welcome them onto campus, build those connections. So that's still going ahead as normal, despite classes potentially not going ahead as normal.
And that was my next question. When we get through orientation, when classes are quote unquote supposed to begin. Have you been given any indication what it's going to look like? Are the buildings going to be locked up? Are the classrooms or the lecture theaters going to be shut down? Any idea what's going to happen then?
Yeah, there'll be a few things. So DSA members teach about 90% of the courses at Dal. There's still a certain segment that are taught by people who are QP members or other like employees. And so those classes will still be going ahead. And so the university has told me they're supposed to release which classes are going ahead in the next coming days. My understanding is that most university buildings will still be open. Access to those buildings will still happen. But any classes that are taught by DSA members won't be going ahead. Similarly, you won't be able to reach out to any DSA members because they're currently locked out of their email accounts.
Right.
And the university has told me as well they're planning on having some events that they're going to be putting on, some academic situations. I'm not super clear on what that looks like specifically, but
as the student union is usually very heavily involved in this orientation week or Frosh week or whatever you want to call it. That must be extremely difficult this year with all the questions you have to answer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're excited to be able to welcome folks in.
Right.
That's fine, but it definitely is a busy time of year. We've been working hard to advocate for students during this process, and trying to get things passed and get questions answered and advocate for students to the administration. And so there's definitely no shortage of things to do with planning a week, and then also trying to make sure that students are fairly represented and advocated for in the process.
Have you had any kind of communication from the university or from the DFA with regards to this strike?
Yeah, myself, I've been in communication regularly with both parties. So I meet with university administrators typically twice a week to talk through students' concerns, to bring them up to them. And then I also have been in regular communication with the DFA. And then beyond that as well, the DSU successfully passed a motion in the special Senate meeting that will offer some protections to students who opt not to cross picket lines. So there has been lots going on, lots of communication, which I'm very grateful for, that both parties are willing to communicate.
Right.
Yeah.
I appreciate that too. Maren, I drove around the campus yesterday, and obviously the picket lines are up, and I drove by where the residents are, and there was picket lines there. Is there any indication that I've been there for move-in day. I know how crazy it is. Is there a contingency plan for maybe getting some improved traffic flow through there, dealing with picket lines and with students with moving trucks, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that would fall on the university side of things,
right,
and not the student union side. So I'm not sure the internal operations there. Most of the picket lines are not actually on the Dal campus proper, but on the sidewalks surrounding the Dal campus.
Yeah.
And they largely wouldn't impact the direct area that residences are happening, but it is definitely like a high traffic part of time when there's move-in day. So I'm sorry I can't answer that question better. I would anticipate the impact would be fairly minimal on the direct residence areas.
It's always crazy down there anyway, right? So
yeah, exactly.
As a non-student, it's a place I don't go anywhere near for the next couple of days when move-in's happening because it's busy.
I don't blame you for that.
Now, have you heard from students in their fourth year or in those accelerated third year programs that are worried that they may not be able to graduate this year?
Yeah, definitely. That's something that I've been hearing a lot about, people being worried about what an extended strike means for their ability to get credits. And beyond just folks who are potentially graduating their undergrad right now, I've heard lots from graduate students as well who might be starting the graduate program and it's difficult to get connected to their supervisor, or folks who had defenses scheduled during August that have had to be rescheduled. And those folks are definitely in a precarious situation surrounding the graduation timelines. And so I've been hearing that from folks who are undergrad and graduate students alike, that they're concerned about graduation timelines.
Best thing would be to get both sides back to the table and get a deal, right?
Absolutely. That's what we're pushing for. We need to get a negotiated deal that really serves everyone in the Dal community well, including students, and that can't happen if people aren't at the table. So we're really asking both sides to come back to the table to figure something out so that we can make sure that students are getting the education that they're paying for.
Maren, appreciate it. I know you're busy.
I appreciate it as well. Thanks for letting me come on here.
That is Maren Mealey, the president of the Dalhousie Student Union. It's a stressful time anyway, right? Like, even if you're not a first year, if you're a second year, you're kind of used to this. But like there's third year with these accelerated nursing programs and and fourth year students obviously that are looking to get as money, or fifth year students looking to get their credits done so they can graduate. And I stand to be corrected, but have not seen a whole lot of communication that these two sides are even meeting and discussing and negotiating. So I would imagine there'll be some additional pressure ramped up now that we're at Labor Day almost and the beginning of the semester. So stay tuned for the very latest on that as we watch that labor dispute. When we come back, the Elver fishery. It's been certainly in the news, and now we're going to see a film on it that's going to debut at the Atlantic International Film Festival. We'll have a conversation with Wayne Burns when we come back. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Back in minutes. Welcome back. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Came across this in the Truro News, and to be quite honest, having followed the illegal elver fishery story in Nova Scotia for some time, and the ongoing battles and some of the violence that's been associated with it, I've often thought to myself that this is like something that you would see in the movies. Well, we are going to see it in the movies because there is a new film that's going to hit the Atlantic International Film Festival that focuses on this subject, and very pleased to welcome into the program Wayne Burns, who's behind this film. Wayne, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. This story is, as I mentioned in the preamble, is something that I thought was out of a Hollywood movie, and now we're going to get to see a little bit of it, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's not Hollywood yet. I did film it in Truro and surrounding Halifax area. But it's a little taste of certainly something a bit more cinematic around what's been happening across the province.
So this is this based on a true story, or is this fiction, or what should we classify it as?
I would say it's definitely fiction drawn from kind of headlines.
Right.
There's been a lot of violence happening around the illegal capture of elverfish, of elvers in the province, sorry. And so I kind of more or less took from some of the headlines that I was seeing, spoke to some local fishermen, and kind of built my own story around that. Very much based in the perspective of the main character, Jason, and his desire to provide for his family. And so he turns to do something illegal and then ends up kind of on the wrong side of a bad deal. You
said you filmed this entirely in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently, I live in Toronto, but I'm from Truro originally, and it was an opportunity for me last summer to come home, and over the course of 4 days, me and my cinematographer, Tim Umbercat, and my sound guy, Josh Owen, we just kind of went into the woods for 4 days and shot a bunch of footage and then turned that into this film. And so it's my first film that I've made totally in Nova Scotia.
It's always fun to come home, isn't it?
Absolutely.
What's it like to shoot in Nova Scotia? I ask filmmakers this a lot because I know that when you come to Nova Scotia and you shoot in Nova Scotia, it sometimes presents some unique challenges.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just a lesson in generosity. I was so surprised how much of my community came forward to help make the film possible, which isn't necessarily the same in Toronto. I feel like in Toronto it's a lot of business, and this felt it came from a real place of love and support and how people could help me. Jonathan Torrance is a big mentor of mine, and he was a big supporter of the film, and I didn't feel like I ran into many challenges as much as I ran into kind of green lights, I guess. It was a really refreshing experience.
It's that blue noser spirit, right?
Absolutely.
Wayne, who's in the cast?
So I'm actually the main character, Jason, and then my friends Kumbi and Kevin Kincaid are the other kind of more primary characters. And then I had a couple other friends come in as additional support, which is Drew O'Hara, Taylor Olson, who's a pretty well-known filmmaker in Halifax, and then Josh McDonald round out the cast.
So this, as I understand it, will premiere at the Atlantic International Film Festival, right?
That's correct. It's its world premiere. And we're playing a couple festivals after that, but I'm very excited that, though, it gets to open up at Atlantic Film Festival. I've played there a couple times as an actor, but this is my first film as a director to premiere at the festival, so very exciting.
So the film is called Eel. It premieres on the September 12th at the Park Lane Theaters at 6 o'clock, and you can get tickets where?
You can get them on the website at the Atlantic International Film Festival. That's going to be the most immediate way to get them.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing it, Wayne, and congratulations, and we look forward to watching it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the conversation.
That is Wayne Burns. He is the character and the director of the film called Eel. Very timely here in Nova Scotia, based on the elver fishery and some of the drama that is associated with what happens there. It's again another Nova Scotia film. We talked about one yesterday. The film industry here is small but mighty, I will say, and it's growing just about every day. And I know, and this is the second time, it's 2 days in a row, where we've talked to filmmakers who say that they're just blown away by the level of generosity of Nova Scotians that when they come here, people are just willing to help, and it's something that we've been long proud of here in Nova Scotia for a long time, and I'm glad that it continues as we move towards building that industry up again and becoming can I say Hollywood North? Maybe, even though that's kind of Toronto's thing. Would be nice to see more productions here featuring some Nova Scotia talent, and both behind the camera and in front of it. Still to come on the program today, we have a busy show. My goodness, it's action-packed, so to speak. We, of course, will be stopping down at 11 o'clock after the news to welcome Dr. John Gillis into the program. If you have a medical-related question, Dr. John will be here to answer your question as part of our weekly House Calls visit with the good doctor. I look forward to your calls. And then, of course, after 12 o'clock today, we will be opening up the phones for the Midweek Meltdown, an opportunity to talk about whatever it is on your mind. That gives you a chance to get it out there, and then we can have a discussion. We had some good discussions over the last couple of days about wages and buses and that kind of thing, and I'm looking forward to listening to you today. And the question I'm asking, and I want you to get ready for it, the question I'd like to hear from you is are your elbows still up? Right? You know, are we still buying Canadian, and are we still avoiding travel to the United States, or are we still doing what we can to support Canadian business? Because to be honest, it feels to me like it's kind of just slipped to the wayside. We had a strong effort in January and February when there was all that talk of 51st State and these massive tariffs, and then the back and forth, and now we had tariffs and counter tariffs, and now some of Canada's counter tariffs are coming off, and it just feels like the whole thing is just kind of moving towards, I'm not going to say it's completely on the back burner, but it's getting there. So that's the question I'd like you to answer come 12 o'clock today. Are your elbows still up? Are you still buying Canadian? Are you still avoiding American products? And are you still avoiding travel to the United States? We're going to take a break here on the Todd Veinotte Show. When we come back, the Old Farmer's Almanac. Yeah, it's back for another year. What does it say? What is it predicting with regards to the weather here in Nova Scotia? We will bring all that to you when we come back. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes.
X.
You can imagine when we're listening to the weather forecast these days and we're seeing dry and no rain and above normal and high humidity and all of the terms that we have become accustomed to since, I don't know, the end of June here in Nova Scotia, that we're looking towards the fall season and then more particularly in towards the winter season as we hope for maybe some things to change a little, maybe to get a little more precipitation as we're experiencing drought conditions here in our part of the world. And I came across this getting ready here for the show earlier this week, and the lead line in the press release said that time flies, heals all wounds, and is the wisest counselor. It also brings new seasons, the reasons to celebrate, and the latest edition of North America's most beloved keeper of time and tradition, the Old Farmer's Almanac, the original guide to living well with its good humor, sage advice, and, of course, 80% accurate long-range weather. So that's the one that kind of popped into my mind because it's the one question I'm sure that our guest hears the most from people who ask questions about the Farmer's Almanac. And our guest is the associate editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac, Joe Bills. Joe, is that the number one question people ask? What's happening with the weather?
Oh, absolutely, far and away, by miles, yes. We have been doing long-range weather forecasts for 230-plus years, and in many ways, they're still as mysterious as they were when they started. But we do not only do we historically claim a 80% accuracy rate, but last year's forecasts were significantly higher than that. So we were in the upper 90s as far as the accuracy of our predictions. So every once in a while we get one right.
Right.
And hopefully this will be another one of those. Hopefully we're continuing the trend.
So how does it work? Do you have a whole bunch of people that are studying patterns and data, or is there some old-timey things that you look at, like the number of berries on trees or those kind of things?
We had great fun for many years coming up with crazy things that we could say in interviews where we're part of our system. You pluck a chicken and then set it free and see which way it runs, and all these crazy things. Most of which were not true.
Right.
The reality is, all the way back in 1792, when Robert B. Thomas put out the first, what is now Old Farmer's Almanac. It was just Farmer's Almanac back then. He was a strong believer in the idea that sunspots and radiation activity on the sun was a driver and a predictor of weather on the Earth, and so we that has become more mainstream science and is largely agreed upon to varying degrees now, but we've kept some of that old time sort of folk wisdom that he brought to it. And we also have a team of meteorologists and climatologists and people that are, using the cutting edge science and the satellite technology and everything else to sort of track the trends of what's happening on the Earth, throughout the country and throughout both Canada and the United States, throughout the continent, I guess we should say. And when we look at averages, what we're looking at is not necessarily comparing the weather to last year, but comparing it to a 30-year average.
Right.
So we've got some history on our side, and our Canadian edition we've been doing since 1982, the dedicated tailored to Canada edition. But the overall Old Farmer's Almanac goes all the way back to 1792. So there is a lot of history for us to look at and sort of compare patterns to, and draw on sort of the wisdom that we've collected over the years.
All right, Joe, the question is, what's going to happen here in Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada? And I'm looking at the map here, and I'm seeing that we are in store for maybe some milder than normal temperatures, but we could see some snow this year.
Yes, indeed. And I think overall the trend is that the temperatures are a bit milder, but in your case in particular, it's also precipitation is going to be a bit higher. That may very well come as good news. For folks that don't like the snow, however, it might be less than entirely good news. So we've got the first sort of notable snowstorm moving in right around mid-November. So it's going to be a wintry kind of winter from the looks of it.
And with us being in a current drought situation and lacking in groundwater, I think more people will be happy to hear that than not.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of rain in that, particularly in the early winter forecast as well. So hopefully that'll correct a little bit of where things have gone south in the drought here. So
we can expect rain in the fall season, and then that's translating into a more snowier than normal, which we didn't get a whole lot last year, but a little bit more than normal this year.
Yes, yeah, that is what it looks like to us. Of course, it always depends on exactly where the temperatures fall, but it is appearing as if sort of from that early to mid-December throughout much of January, it's going to be fairly cold. Even though overall the temperatures are above normal, that little window of time looks like there's a pretty solid cold snap sitting in. So the precipitation that comes in that window is looking like it's probably going to be snow.
And is it going to be a long winter? Are we in for an extended period of cold, or is it going to come early again?
So it's a bit of a mixed bag as we get towards the end. So it's really going to be a pretty fine line between what's rain and what's snow as we move sort of out of March and into April. We have the last sort of gasp of what might be some snow showers, some winter activity right around the middle of April. So it'll linger a little bit, but leading up to that, I think you're going to be seeing more warm than cold. It's just the cold won't give up quite so easy. So couple gasps there at the end, but I would say pretty typical actually as far as the way the spring plays out.
And further into the year, do you have any insight as to what we can expect for next summer?
Yes. So we're actually looking at according to what we're seeing, a fairly average to maybe slightly below average temperature-wise summer, with still precipitation tending above average. So no repeat of the drought.
So a little bit cooler and a little bit more rain next year, which will be great news for a lot of people.
Yes, that is certainly our hope. We love it when we can be the bearer of good news every once in a while.
Absolutely. Now, the Farmer's Almanac is more than just the weather prediction. There's all kinds of nuggets of information in there.
Yes, indeed. We have a lot of fun, and we try to keep a sense of humor, but we're also really focused on things that matter not just to farmers, but to people who enjoy the outdoors and love this planet. So we've got a great mix this year. My favorite story, well, I shouldn't say that. I have two favorite stories in this issue. My first favorite is a historical story that kind of looks back at a magical baseball season in 1941, and of course that was the world was on the brink of war in 1941, but for a little while, Joe DiMaggio and Ted Williams were putting on such a spectacular show on the baseball diamonds that the world was kind of distracted, or at least this portion of the world was distracted, as Joe DiMaggio was setting his all-time hits record and Ted Williams was batting 400 for the last time ever. And it was just, a really much needed diversion from what was going on in the rest of the world. So that's a fun thing to revisit. My other favorite story in this issue is a sort of exploration of the ever-increasing problem with space junk. And we, of course, are all dependent on our cell phones and all sorts of satellite-based technology these days. But the reality is we never really came up with a particularly great way to retrieve or remove those satellites once their functional days are over. And we've got a very crowded sky above us these days. And at one point, as we explore in the story, somebody came up with the brilliant idea that we might try blowing them up and getting them out of the way. And as it turns out, that took one large object that we needed to figure out what to do with in the sky and turned it into a million tiny objects that we needed to figure out what to do with in the sky. So that was no good. And the reality is we still don't have a great answer. Some of them come down and burn up in the atmosphere, but a lot of them don't. And looking forward, it's one of those things that we are absolutely positively going to have to figure out. From there, we getting a little bit more down to earth. We have a really interesting story about this is a Canadian-based story even on how the arrival of folks from other parts of the world to Canada have sort of opened up this new era of new crops for new Canadians, we call it, and folks from other places desiring the food from back home and coming to realize that Canada is a pretty terrific place to grow, particularly a lot of vegetables that are maybe native to Asia or Africa. And so that's been in many ways a saving grace and an opportunity for farmers to sort of diversify what they're growing and reach out to some new audiences.
The 2026 Old Farmer's Almanac. Sorry, Joe, we're just about out of time. The Old Farmer's Almanac Canadian edition is available for I think it's $10 wherever books and magazines are sold, and you can check it out at almanac.ca. And Joe, I appreciate your time, sir.
Absolutely, and on that front page of the website, there's a link right at the top of the page, a where to buy link. So if you can't find it easily, click there. It'll tell you where you can track us down.
Thanks for coming, Joe.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
That is Joe Bills, associate editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac. Cooler, snowier, cooler, damper, cooler, rain. That's the winter, spring, summer forecast, at least according to the Old Farmer's Almanac. Very quickly before we take a break, I saw that the Nova Scotia Liberal Party has released put out a news release saying that they're going to introduce some legislation this fall that says as students across Nova Scotia return to school, the Nova Scotia Liberals are committed to tabling Social Media Responsibility Act, legislation that would make Nova Scotia the first province to set a minimum age of 16 for social media use, following the lead of places like Australia and Norway. The release says the bill comes at a time when experts and parents alike sounding the alarm on the mental health crisis facing young people, with mounting evidence showing how social media contributes to anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. Easy for me to say. A 2023 study from the U.S. Surgeon General warned the youth who use social media for more than 3 hours a day have doubled the risk of poor mental health outcomes like depression and anxiety. So the Liberals in Nova Scotia are going to introduce legislation this fall that would make it illegal for anyone under the age of 16 to access social media. Might be something you want to discuss in the open hour at noon today. We're going to stop. We're going to take a break. On the other side of it, we're going to open up the telephone lines. It's time for house calls. Dr. John Gillis will be here. If you have a medical-related question, get it in now. That way you're not disappointed. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. The news is next.
Acts.
Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Allstrands. It's time now for house calls. The telephone number 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. If you have a medical-related question and would like the doctor's advice, this is a great opportunity. Just a quick programming note. The house call segment today will be only 30 minutes long. Dr. John has an appointment to get to, so we will only have him on the air for 30 minutes. So if you have a question, get it in quickly. That way you won't have to wait a week. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. We welcome Dr. John Gillis to the air. Dr. John, how are you?
Not too bad. I'm heading to the airport to go to a funeral of a guy I went to med school with who sadly passed a few weeks ago. So that's on the brain.
Right.
Tribute to Dr. Sean Cleary, who was a world-renowned liver surgeon and will be sadly missed.
Yeah, it's awful when we lose friends like that. Dr. John, I don't know if you caught the news there just before you came on. The Liberal government here in the Liberal Party here in Nova Scotia is going to propose legislation this fall when we go back to the legislature to ban the use of social media in kids under the age of 16, saying that it leads to bad things down the road like anxiety and depression. Your experience, have you come across that in your practice that kids are getting some ill effects from their screen time?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's bullying that happens, but even just kids spending too much time and doing literally nothing else. And I think we all of us who have kids to varying degrees have to deal with that and face it. Have to look at what the proposal is. Maybe some enforcement challenges and such there, but I think we all have an obligation to try and get our kids to talk to each other more and talk to us, talk to other people, and be social and get out there and be active instead of doom scrolling TikTok all day.
Right, I hear you. That being said, is access for kids to mental health supports difficult in Nova Scotia these days?
I think it's difficult anywhere. I mean,
right.
There's a shortage of people to treat these conditions, and there's a lot of strain out there. It's not easy, and I do think there is an impact here of both the bullying of social media and sometimes the isolation that it creates, and also the lack of reality or distortion of reality as to what's presented to people and when we see it with adults. I believe everything they read online. So.
Right. It certainly is it's not the way it was when you and I grew up, is it, Dr. John?
some ways that's a good thing. There were no camera phones when we were acting like idiots at St. FX or wherever else. But no, it was a different. Yeah, you wanted to talk to somebody, you had to go see them, or leave them a message on the answering machine. You couldn't get them on WhatsApp, Facebook, text, Instagram, Snapchat, or whatever other platform that people choose to use.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. This is House Calls. He is Dr. John Gillis. Dr. John, saw a couple of emails come in over the last week or so from people who are saying that they're seeing an increase at work and an increase in their social circles of people coming down with respiratory infections. What's it been like in the ER? Are we seeing an uptick now?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I was there yesterday. There was a lot of people coughing and hacking, which is a little unusual for this time of year. But just it's all out there, and we've said many times it's nothing like it was with COVID before. But COVID's there, influenza's there, RSV's there, adenovirus. There's a lot of stuff out there, and we just need to remain diligent. If you're sick, stay home. If you have to go out, wear a mask and get your immunizations, and try to keep yourself healthy and keep other people healthy. It's not rocket science, but people don't pay attention sometimes.
And get the immunizations when you can.
Exactly.
Also, obviously, you probably experienced it. I know many in Nova Scotia are experiencing it today and yesterday, and that's this wildfire smoke, Dr. John. Other than wearing a mask out, any advice to people that have respiratory issues that are dealing with this smoke as of late?
Yeah, if you can. Some people can't, and getting a proper N95 mask if you need to be outside where the smoke that will at least filter some of those smoke particles. But not an easy thing to deal with. And in St. John's a couple of weeks ago, and it was downtown, smelled like a campfire. But it was transient, didn't bother me. But if you've got chronic lung issues, it can be distressing for people.
902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. If you have a question for Dr. John, ample of lines open, your opportunity to join us. I got an email, Dr. John, before the show today I'd like you to take a listen to. It comes from a writer who says that my family has a history of breast cancer. I don't have a doctor. How long a wait is it to get a mammogram, and is there things I can do at home to see if I am developing any kind of symptoms?
Pretty sure the Nova Scotia mammography program is self-referral. I don't think you need a doctor. You can just go online or call, and they will book screening appointments, for the appropriate age bracket, etc. But that should be easy to access.
Right. And there's also literature and video on self-examination, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. But people who are age and risk eligible for mammograms should have mammograms. So
right.
It's important to get that done.
Is there an age where we should start getting mammograms?
I don't remember off the top of my head the cutoff suggestion, but I'll look that up.
Right. We're going to take our first break here on House Calls. Dr. John is on the line. If you have a question for the good doctor, 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. House Calls continues after the break. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. It's House Calls with Dr. John Gillis, an abbreviated version of the program today as Dr. John's getting ready to take a flight. So if you want to get your question answered, this is your opportunity. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Dr. John also got an email from somebody who said that they've been recently diagnosed as having MS and have been extremely tired after that diagnosis. Is that something that is associated with that disease, and is there something that can be done to be a little less fatigued?
Yeah, fatigue can go with MS, and I think part of it is determining what treatment is available and can help in general, and just optimizing other health factors are both relevant for people with MS. So MS Clinic does a great job of helping with these things.
It's there's a whole host of things that can happen to people that have been diagnosed with MS.
Oh, absolutely. And again, the treatment can really help, but people need to check in with the clinic. 902-405-6000 is the number. It's 902-405-6000.
6,000. Dr. John, we know that this weekend is the long weekend. It's the Labor Day weekend, and that, of course, marks the traditional beginning of class and kids going back to school and getting back into routines. As a physician, any or a parent even, any tips for people that are trying to get their kids ready to go back?
I think it's just getting ready, getting prepared, making sure that, the different routines of summer are slowly transitioned back to, getting up early, being ready to go. And, it's been a nice summer here. You get into that kind of summer cottagey, go to the lake kind of lifestyle. And
Right.
it's, time to get back to reality. I just wanted to mention I looked up the screen, had the AI do it for me because I'm driving, but the mammogram recommendations 40 to 49 in Nova Scotia, I believe, is annually, and 50 to 74 is every 2 years.
Right.
Some exceptions to that based on family history or higher risk, but it is self-referral. You can find those numbers in a matter of seconds online, and just call up and they'll get you booked.
Any idea how long is it quick? Can you get one in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, I don't know about a couple of weeks, but it is pretty quick. And then there's a different process. If somebody finds something like if you actually have a lump, or your doctor or healthcare provider finds something, it's a different sort of queue
Right.
for what we call a diagnostic mammogram to be a little more specific about it. But they do a really good job, and we hear complaints about wait times for a lot of things, but this is usually one of them.
902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. That is the number. Lines are wide open if you'd like to get your question answered by Dr. John. He's here for the next 6 or 7 minutes and then has to take off. So an abbreviated version of the program today as we move through this Wednesday on the show. Dr. John, we're obviously getting into that back-to-school regime and getting the kids adjusted. And I like to refer to classrooms sometimes as Petri dishes. As a family member, other than having your kid wash their hands, is there anything we can do to prevent all those bugs coming home?
It's just all the same stuff about respiratory viruses. Wash your hands at school, wash your hands at home. If you're sick, stay away. And, if people get vaccinated, it massively reduces the risk. I mean, this is why we're seeing measles, because people stop getting vaccinated. And it's just, a fair bit of common sense. And, we're still going to have the daycare sniffles as, new
Right.
bugs and new variants come home, but you do all you can to prevent them and stay away from them.
The same old wash the hands and just the prevention methods, right? It's really all you can do.
Yeah, but I mean, people, we all get complacent. I mean, I think the cleaning people did during COVID, wiping down surfaces. I think, institutions do that, and, daycares and schools do it. But, I think it's fair to say we've gotten maybe a little complacent as time has passed. The bugs are all still out there, and the more we practice, cleanliness and, wiping surfaces down at home and, in a school, hospital, daycare, it just lowers the risk for everybody. So it just makes sense.
And we're getting into fall allergies too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, different allergies, right? The summer pollens, and then you get into, as the climate changes and things start to die, you get, different allergens, and people are inside more, dusts and that sort of thing. So be prepared and keep an eye on it and keep yourself healthy.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. If you have a question for Dr. John, he's got about 4 minutes left before he has to jet off. So we're going to try and get to your call as quickly as we can. 902-405-6000. You mentioned measles, Dr. John. Any more news on that? I know it flared up there quite a bit earlier in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, it's you don't hear as much. It seems to be settling down. I mean, there was a pretty aggressive campaign to get people who needed to be vaccinated, who hadn't had a second MMR shot, people born after 1970, to get one. And, we've seen a fair bit of that happening, both in clinics and in, pharmacies, et cetera. So I think that's made an impact. The biggest thing is awareness and just, realizing that, how important this is, and to, ideally ignore the noise coming out of the clowns running the show south of the border.
Immunizations work, right?
Certainly do. I mean, these diseases were eradicated, and the fact that we're even talking about it is very very, very frustrating. It's one thing to question a brand new vaccine that was made in an emergency, and sure, we would have liked more time to test it, but people were dying. But these other vaccines have been around for 20, 30, 40 years, and are safe as can be, and are saving lives. 6-year-olds should not be dying of the measles in Texas. It's ridiculous, but here we are.
All right, Dr. John, I know you're busy. We're going to let you go. Appreciate your time. Talk to you next week.
Stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.
That is Dr. John Gillis. He's here every Wednesday to answer your medical-related questions. With him only being available for 30 minutes today, that means we have extra time for the midweek meltdown. We're going to do that right after the news here at the bottom of the hour. I've been asking the question all morning, and I'm curious to what your thoughts are. Are your elbows still up? We know that there was a big push on in Canada right after the inauguration and after that inaugural speech, and then all of the rhetoric over 51st state and tariffs and liberation days, and the list just goes on. And Canadians, I think, are kind of rallied around the flag a little bit, and we got under that elbows up banner, and we're doing, and I'm putting quotations around this, our part to maybe fight back a little bit against the United States at one point. But I wonder if the elbows are still up, and I wonder if you still have the same resolve that you had in January and February. We're in August. It's almost September. I can anecdotally say that I can remember when this first started, that people were spending extra time in the grocery stores, flipping labels over, looking for Canadian flags or made in Canada or something along those lines, or not made in the United States. I wonder if that's still the case. I wonder if you're still as resolved to avoid American products. There's also a big push on to not travel to the United States. I know that the Premier of Nova Scotia mentioned it. I know that the Premier of British Columbia has been very vocal about it, being that Vancouver is almost on the border, right? Are you still avoiding American goods? Are you still avoiding American travel? Are you still keeping your elbows up? That's a question I'd like to hear from you on today. Also, this just came in today. The Liberal Party here in Nova Scotia is going to put forth legislation in this sitting of the House, which I think is the end of September, somewhere around, I think it's the 23rd, but I could be wrong there. That being said, they're going to put forth legislation in the province of Nova Scotia to, as they say, protect kids from social media and ban the use of social media under the age of 16. Derek Mombercat and Ian Rankin announcing this today, saying that they're going to introduce the Social Media Responsibility Act. Would be legislation that would make Nova Scotia the very first province in Canada to set a minimum age of 16 for social media use. Apparently this is happening in countries like in Australia and Norway. Liberal House Leader Ian Rankin will table the bill this fall. They say it comes at a time when experts and parents alike are sounding the alarm on the mental health crisis facing young people, with mounting evidence showing that how social media contributes to things like anxiety and depression and suicide. A 2023 study from the U.S. Surgeon General warning that youth who use social media more than 3 hours a day to have double the risk of poor mental health outcomes like depression and anxiety. We're going to open up the telephone lines a little bit early today, 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000, or if you like, 1-877-801-8255. That's 1-877-801-8255. The Midweek Meltdown. Right after the news, you're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. At one point, we had threatened to put cameras in here. to bring the Todd Veinotte show onto social media, which will lead me to my question coming up in a minute. But there was a lot of pushback here because sometimes the behind the scenes it might make for good video because some of the dancing and some of the frivolity that goes on back here would kind of blow your mind. Anyway, back to the serious nature of this program. I'm Dan Alstrand. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. Dr. John had an appointment to get to, so we are going to do the open hour a little bit early. So we've got those telephone lines open right now, 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Or 1-877-801-8255. This is the Midweek Meltdown, your chance to talk about whatever it is that is on your mind, whatever you want to talk about. That's the beauty of the open line radio. Just saw an update very quickly. They, in fact, just posted a few moments ago from the Department of Natural Resources on the Long Lake wildfire. It now at 8,278 hectares, so almost 83 square kilometers in size, continues to burn out of control. DNR officials are saying that the assessment of Sunday's damage, that's the houses that were damaged or destroyed by the fire, is still in the assessment phase. Beyond that, there have been no reports, any new reports of any damages to homes. Crews continue to focus now on the east side of Paradise Lake, also working around entire perimeter of the fire. Air Resources, there's 6 choppers, 6 planes, plus bird dogs, 36 DNR firefighters, 62 from Ontario. That's what we were talking about earlier in the day. A new cohort of Ontario firefighters have come to Nova Scotia to give the people that have been on that fire since day one a little bit of a break, and I think that's well deserved. They've been out there for a long time. 59 local firefighters as well working there, plus some heavy equipment operators, and they will do an update at 2 o'clock this afternoon. That's the latest on the wildfire situation in Annapolis County. I have been mentioning throughout the show today, and I'm very curious to what your thoughts are as we watch yet another meeting happen south of the border. Dominic LeBlanc, the trade minister down there, met with Howard Lutnick yesterday, and as has been the vernacular, each and every time that one of our leaders meets with an official from the Trump administration, we get it was a productive meeting, but not seeing a whole lot of movement on the file. It leads me to ask the question, and I'm curious to what your thoughts are on this. Are your elbows still up? Are you still buying Canadian goods? Are you still avoiding American stuff? And are you still avoiding American travel? I know we're getting into September and everybody's focused on back to school, but winter travel season is right around the corner. And I know that many of you are planning your winter vacations. Are you still avoiding traveling to the United States, or did you ever? 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000 is the number. There are a number of lines open if you want to get in to comment on that. Also, the Liberals in Nova Scotia announcing today that they will introduce legislation this fall to limit the use of social media to people under the age of 16. Ian Rankin to introduce this piece of legislation in the fall. Session, I do believe, is going to happen at the end of September. That would not allow anybody under the age of 16 to use the TikTok or Twitter or X, I guess, or Facebook or WhatsApp or what's the other one? Snapchat and Instagram. The list goes on and on. This to me feels like it's going to be an enforcement nightmare. As I understand it, we would put the onus on to the social media companies to police this. So is Meta or Elon's company or the rest of the social medias, are they going to be responsible for this? And what's going to be is it just going to be, do you have to hold your hand in the air and say, yes, I'm over the age of 16, or is there going to be something else? It just feels like this is going to be a logistical nightmare. But it does open the debate on social media use with teenagers under the age of 16. Dr. John was telling us that he has seen in his travels in the ER the ill effects of social media with the bullying, which I can't even imagine. I mean, bullying was bad when I was a teenager, and that was long before anybody was putting a phone in their pocket. It must be extra intense now because you just can't get away from it. Should we be banning social media use for kids under the age of 16? 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000, or anything you want to talk about. We are in an extended edition of the Open Hour today, so there's lots of time for you to get in. Lots of lines are open right now. If you want to join the program, again, 902-405-6000. We begin with Rafe. Rafe, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to make a comment on the whole elbows up situation.
Sure.
I've been for years elbows up. I guess I try to avoid Chinese products for the same kind of reason. The way they treat their workers, and so I've been trying to boycott China. And I definitely am not avoiding. I'm avoiding American products as much as I can.
It's not easy, is it?
No, it's not easy. You have to really do your homework. Not homework, but you got to check. It's kind of fairly easy with like produce and stuff. You look at anything that peaches and oranges and, try and buy stuff from Chile or South Africa or,
right.
And the other thing was, I know Parapolyev had said that Mark Carney's elbows came down when he started negotiating with Trump. I kind of feel the opposite, that Canada and China are the only two countries in the world that have stood up to him and said, no, we're not going to just take it lying down. We're not going to just let you force tariffs on us. We're going to negotiate, and we're going to put counter tariffs on. All the other countries, Great Britain and the European group, they've just basically said, yeah, you want to slap tariffs on us? Great. So I think Carney has really kept them up. He stood up to Trump, and he's just saying, no, we're not going to just lie down and just take it. So I think he's kind of doing the opposite. And the main reason that I avoid American products is because of Trump. I mean, I don't know if you saw what he said yesterday. There was a quote. I was watching CNN this morning. There was a quote that he said, I can do anything I want. I'm the president of the United States. So basically, they've got a dictatorship down there now, and I just can't, in good conscience, support that. So,
Rafe, great points.
That's my take on it.
Appreciate the call, sir.
Yep, thank you.
902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. I would have agreed with Rafe right up until late last week or early this week. I think it was Friday when the Prime Minister announced that he was removing some of the counter tariffs that Canada had instituted when the first round of tariffs came out. And the reason why I say that is that when the Prime Minister announced that he was removing those tariffs, those counter tariffs, that this was a sticking point with the Americans. Well, that was the whole idea behind it, was to be a sticking point. If you do it to us, and I get this one-upmanship, and we saw it with China, where it went from this percentage to this percentage to this percentage, and then they were embargo territory, and everybody's like, hey, wait a minute, this isn't going to work. But to that point, I would have agreed with Rafe saying that Prime Minister Carney's elbows are up, but it feels like that we've become complacent and we're just being very Canadian about it. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe being the level-headed, very apologetic Canadian that we're around the world known for. Maybe that is the right negotiation technique. But Rafe does raise some interesting points that we haven't backed down. We don't have a trade deal. We don't have a 15% or 20% or 25% across the board tariff. I think Kuzma has a lot to do with that. And I think I said it yesterday that I'm very concerned when we get to the point where we're renegotiating the Kuzma deal. That's the free trade deal between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. The greatest deal ever signed. I think the President of the United States called it when he signed it. I worry about that because that I think has been protecting us a lot from this. But I would have said yes that the elbows were still up right up until we started to relax these things because the Americans don't like it. That just feels to me like we're getting a little complacent. Do you agree with me? Here's your chance, 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. The open hour continues after the break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. We're back in minutes.
X.
Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. It is the midweek meltdown. The lines are open. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Or 1-877-801-8255. Lots of lines there for you if you want to join the program. Are your elbows up or have you lowered them? We've been discussing this for a little while now about what we can do as Canadians to send a message to the United States. Has it been message received, or are we just being, as much as it's a stereotype, being very Canadian, and we got our elbows up, and now we're just lowering them and going about our business? 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000 is the number. We welcome Peter to the program. Peter, how are you?
Hey, long time no talk to you guys. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, same old, Dan. Don't even ask.
Fair enough. What's on your mind?
Well, elbows up, right?
Right.
But we have a problem. I live right beside the railway tracks.
Mm-hmm.
That's Warren Buffett and Bill Gates are the majority shareholders.
Okay.
They're both American companies.
Right.
All the biggest companies, the most powerful right now, besides the arms companies, are the tech companies. The tech companies' biggest, and why they make so much profit, or they don't have to, is their biggest customer is the government. We've got Google Classroom, all of the software, all of the spy technology, all the surveillance technology, our railroads, most of our mills, most everything are big big American companies or international.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can put our elbows up all we want when we buy our peas or our green peppers, but the big money is spent by our governments on the Googles of the world and the Metas and the all of them, or the Palantirs and the ones we don't hear about, the Microsoft. It's everywhere, isn't it? And that's all the government uses. Nobody's mentioned a word about renationalizing. All of the planes that we fly in, or Boeing or McDonnell Douglas or whatever, 90% of our arms are American. We've never even lifted a finger. All we've done is, ever since 1984, all we've done is sell everything off, everything we could, to the Americans, because they got all the money.
Right.
And now all of a sudden let's put our elbows up. I'm not buying those carrots. They come from a nice farmer, in Maine. I'm going to buy those carrots from Mexico, where they're built, they're picked by slave labor on a factory farm. But I got my elbows up. Talk to your government. The government has sold us out so badly. To think of, I'll tell you something. When I was a young man in Thunder Bay, you know that place.
I do.
The idea of children and old people living on the street, and if you look at a map, we should be the richest country in the world. We're bigger than any other country except Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And believe me, Russia they're doing just fine, thank you. Whatever you're told, there's other sources of information, and Russia's doing just fine battling the American tariffs and sanctions. Canada is just this, we're a piggy bank. And now, instead of it being a piggy bank for America, we're going to be a piggy bank for Europe. Oh, here's a couple billion in Ukraine. oh, Estonia, we'll look after you for 3 more years. How much do you think that cost? It's $150 an hour per man per day. It's craziness. Why don't we talk peace? And there's one other thing before I go, and
Sure.
I thank you so much for your time, Dan. I truly appreciate it. We, Canada, make the bullets. Okay? We think we're not making those nasty atom bombs, and we're not making nasty this and nasty that. No, we supply all the small arms and all the small arms ammunition. We're not this shining light on the top of the hill. We're just another British colony. And we got to look at ourselves in the mirror and face facts.
Peter, appreciate it, sir. Have a good one. 902-405-6000. 902-405-6000. Let's see if we can squeeze one more in here. Dan, how are you?
Hi, Dan. Hi. I have a question about the fine that the forest fine.
Oh, the woods ban fine. Yep.
Yeah. Is it like car payments where it would take years to pay it off, or do you want it?
I don't know. I think you probably can go to court and probably figure out some kind of a payment plan, but I'm not 100% sure.
Well, it seems excessive because if you look at how things worked out in real life, it didn't prevent a fire. And I think most people really didn't have to be threatened to stay out of the woods. They did anyway, but some people didn't listen. So
35 people didn't listen, that's for sure.
35?
Yeah.
I thought it was like 7.
No, it's 35. There's a story in the paper today. It says that there have been, I do believe it's 25 people that have been fined for having open fires and another 10 for violating the travel ban in the woods.
Oh, boy. Most people, if they had a fine like that, they had to pay all at once. It
right.
basically
It
lose
bankrupt
their house.
you. It would absolutely bankrupt you.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Appreciate it, Dad. 902-405-6000 is the number, 902-405-6000. The question I'm asking you today is, are your elbows still up? We had a pretty significant outpouring of support for Canadian products when all of this business began. It happened even before January. It happened after remember the meeting at Mar-a-Lago and Prime Minister Trudeau at the time and his entourage heading down there trying to have a dinner, and that's where the 51st comments came out, and then it just started to go from there. It started to use the Canadian term snowball, and Canadians were on board. We're like, all right, elbows up, right? We're going to do what we can. I know Peter was talking about governments, but as just a everyday Dan, what can I'm not going to get the government to stop using Microsoft, but I can buy the carrots that will impact the American economy. And we are seeing that people who have decided to not vacation in the United States having an impact in some of those places. I'm thinking Orlando and down in Texas and in Las Vegas, where the Visitors Authority said that it used to be a faucet of Canadians, now it's a drip. But it just feels like we're getting complacent again, and maybe we are. I don't know. My question to you is this: are your elbows still up? We're going to carry the open hour on for the next hour after the news here at the top of the clock. 60 more minutes of your thoughts on the midweek meltdown. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes.
Facts.
All right, we're back. Welcome to the Todd Veinotte Show. This is the Midweek Meltdown. The telephone lines are open. The numbers are 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Or if you like, 1-877-801-8255. That's 1-877-801-8255. The topic du jour today is elbows up. Are you still keeping them up above your shoulders, or have they maybe come down around the waist, or maybe down all completely as we go through yet another month of us negotiating. I'm looking at pictures today during the news of Dominic LeBlanc meeting with Howard Lutnick. I understand that trade talks have resumed in Washington as we work together with the provincial governments and the federal governments to try and come to some sort of consensus with a trade deal with the United States. Have we become complacent as a society? Are our elbows down? 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Brian to the program. Brian's a first-time caller. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. I guess it comes down to, for me, I personally think Carney's doing a good job. I think his reasons for undoing tariffs in Canada against the U.S. has probably got something to do with the chat he had with Trump last week and with Dominic LeBlanc going to Washington. He must know something is there that's going to open the door to better negotiations down the road for Canada. So I'm not saying elbows up. I'm not saying elbows down, but I am saying elbows in pause mode. Because if we get a deal in the next 90 days that relaxes all tariffs between both countries, will anyone question Canada's tactics at that point?
Well, I don't think they will, but Brian, I would be very surprised if when we eventually do get a deal, if there's no tariffs attached at all. I would be shocked.
Oh, no, I believe there's going to be tariffs, Dan. I totally agree with you there, but I think be patient now while the dealing's going on, even with an unrealistic leader like Trump, but I don't think we have to have full elbows up. I think relaxing the money that we're getting for the tariffs for the U.S. companies wanting to do business here can be paused for 30 or 60 days while Dominic, waves his magic wand down in Washington. If we then get a deal and there are tariffs, is this relaxing of the tariffs in Canada going to end up being a better deal for Canadian companies that want to do business down there? That's my only point.
And a fair point, Brian. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Matt to the show. Matt, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you today, Dan?
Good. Your elbows up?
Well, I think they kind of are. I certainly keep my elbows up. But, your last caller made an interesting point, but I think that we forget that the tariffs on American goods are a tax on Canadians, right? So that's hurting our economy. It feels good to say we're tariffing them in retaliatory tariffs, but all we're doing is increasing the costs of the things that we buy in Canada.
It's something
Americans so on us.
It's something the Americans do not understand. They don't get that the tariffs that the U.S. president is putting on things, they're paying it.
That's right. So is Carney's not playing that game. So we don't control that the Americans are going to put tariffs on Canadian goods going south. So our steel industry and whatnot, they're being harmed by the actions of the United States. If we put a reciprocal tariff, say, on the car that's coming back across the border because it feels good, it's not the American car manufacturer paying the tariff, it's the Canadian importer. So Carney understands that we're just adding more inflationary costs to Canadians because it feels good and it looks like we're fighting. But in fact, and I'll use this analogy, putting tariffs on Canadian, or on American goods is shooting ourselves in the foot. Trump is shooting holes in his own boat in the United States.
Absolutely.
So we'll hand him more bullets. We don't need to hurt our economy because he's hurting his. I think it puts us in a better position. But it doesn't feel good. It doesn't look good.
Right.
But really, if we all believe that tariffs are a tax on ourselves, then why are we increasing taxes on Canadians when we desperately need reprieve? So I think it's a good move. Now, I think Carney needs to be doing, chewing gum and walking at the same time. Where is the pipeline west? Where is the pipeline east? We should not be talking about, and I know Donald Trump wants Keystone XL. He said 1,000 times that he doesn't need Canadian oil, but he really wants Keystone XL.
He gets 7 million barrels of oil a day from Canada. He needs it. He just doesn't understand it.
That's right. And he's brought up, maybe we, with the tariff negotiations, let's have Keystone XL. Why would we negotiate giving more oil at a massive discount to a guy that is threatening to take over the 51st state? Why are we still in talks of buying more F-35s? I think Carney should move to the Gripen.
Yep.
If you ever looked at that deal on how good a deal that is for Canada, that would be a really good deal.
That the Swedish plane? Is that the one from Sweden?
That's the Saab Swedish plane, and they offered if we purchased those fighter jets, and we have to still get some F-35s, but let's just, for simplicity's sake, say that it was 50-50. We've already committed to X amount of F-35s. But the Gripen, the Swedes said that they would build them in Canada, they would maintain them in Canada, they would give Canada all of the software updates and control of the software updates. Everything would be in Canada. Whereas the U.S., if we continue down the path of the F-35, all the maintenance, all the software updates are controlled by the U.S. If they don't want to give us the upgrade for the plane, our plane doesn't fly anymore. Why are we doing that?
Right.
And none of the manufacturing is coming to Canadian companies. With a Gripen, the Swedes said that we would build the Gripen in Canada. That would be a great move, I think. And those are the ways that you would hurt the United States. Not that I want to hurt the United States, but elbows up. Canadian steel and Canadian pipelines, Canadian steel and Canadian ships. We should boycott travel to the United States. That is hurting them. We should buy Canadian products. But putting tariffs on American goods coming into Canada just hurts us. The Americans aren't paying any of that. The Canadians are. So if Carney does that, and that's part of his plan, I just would like to see him do the other things as well at the same time. And for the record, I'm a conservative, and I think that Carney's doing the right thing on that.
Matt, appreciate it. Great point, sir.
Great. Have a good day.
902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. We welcome David to the program. David, how are you?
Not too bad. I feel like $1 million.
Fair enough.
I am okay. My elbows are up. I've lived in Canada most of my life, Nova Scotia basically, so that's okay. I'm not really against the U.S. by any means, and for the people who do social media and stuff like that, I tune into my Facebook once in a while, and I like watching the videos. And there's one there and stayed with me forever today, and I said, "Oh, I bet you Dan would like this one."
Uh-oh.
There's a joke. Okay.
Okay.
And his girlfriend or wife or whatever, they kept getting the answer wrong. So here it goes. Somewhere down in the States, there are 3 houses. A red one on the left, a blue one on the right. Where is the White House situated?
No idea.
Yeah, no idea. No guessing on anything?
No, sir.
I bet you Vanessa probably might have answered this one already. The White House. That's the answer. The White House. Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Okay?
Anyway, appreciate it, Dave. Up against the break.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
902-405-6000. Sometimes my sense of humor, I just don't understand some of those jokes. Anyway, 902-405-6000. Are your elbows up? The open hour continues after the break. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. Dan Ahlstrand along with you. The midweek meltdown continues. The number is 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000, or 1-877-801-8255. My question to you today, a simple one. Are your elbows still up? Again, 902-405-6000 is the number. Let's welcome Michael to the program. Michael, how are you?
How are you doing today, Dan?
2 days in a row, Michael. I'm blessed to hear your voice.
You got me laughing, buddy.
There you go.
But anyway, let's get to the interesting subject. Listen, Dave, they're getting ready. By the way, my elbows are down because whatever we say don't mean nothing. We got Peter Pan going from country to country over there, involved in war machines. We got people that haven't even got fresh drinking water in this country. you got people living with no housing. They're talking F-35s. At the same time, they can build one of those little drones for technical purposes, for bombing, for anything, for $200 a drone. So it don't make any sense. Can you remember, and they haven't told us yet, what Mulroney and Martin done when they signed their free trade agreements? Now, you know we're going to have to give up some of our sovereignty, and if that's not what their bottom line is, give more kids away, I'll eat my shoes. I'll eat my shoes. Somebody should get a little whip and go over there and give it to Kearney and say, get back to Canada and look after the problems in your own country. And never mind coming over here like you control a big war machine. You got no war. When you're calling for prescriptions for young people, and then they'll label them bullet material, because that's all they'll be, bullet material. So, you know, it's got to end it. My elbows are down because it's useless to have them up. You haven't got the people in the country organized. 250 years, Liberal, Tory, same old story. Who give away all the ship? And why haven't we got a captain on our ship of state? We got somebody that bulls the people that got elected, and we got to live with that until we produce a leader that's going to come out of the rank and file. God help us all. I'll talk to you later, Dave.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Wendell to the program. Wendell, how are you?
Doing well, Dan, and yourself?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
Good. I'm going to change things up a little bit, sure. Dan. Just wondered if you've ever heard of a group called Independent Nova Scotia.
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, you'll recall that recently you had asked Chris why he doesn't run for office.
Right.
And I know Chris. He's a smart guy, and he cares about the city just like Gloria cares about the city. Well, we attempted to do that, Dan. We tried to run a bunch of independents in the last election. Mm-hmm. By the way, a $13 million wasted election because Houston broke his promises on his fixed election thing, and so we were thwarted by shenanigans by Election Nova Scotia, and the government put bricks on the scales of justice. And you know, Todd had given Paul Palango a lot of time over the years, and rightly so, and all of the rot that he has exposed in that end of things. And I'll tell you, this is a whole different story, and it runs really deep. And you probably also didn't know about a court case that's going on either, I suspect.
Well, there's a lot of court cases. You have to be a little more specific.
Well, a court case against the government.
Well, there's a lot of court cases against the government. You have to be a little more specific.
Well, it's to do with the elections shenanigans.
Right.
And anyway, I suspect that most people don't know about it because to get it out of the public eye, Dan, they didn't run it here in Halifax. You know what they did? They moved it to the little town of Port Hawkesbury. And then they wasted another $1 million of taxpayer money by hiring all the high-priced three-piece suit Halifax lawyers to travel all the way to Port Hawkesbury to fight our guys, basically one or two guys. And you know what? It didn't go all that well for them. And anyway, there's another big one coming up on September the 5th, and it's going to further the thing. But these guys, see, people, I'm sure, understand that the party serves the party and not the people. And we're trying to get independents running who will be responsible for the people who elect them. and therein lies a big part of the problem. These people just act like a bunch of trained seals when the hierarchy tells them what they're going to do and what they're going to vote on and how they're going to vote. Why they just sit there and clap and do whatever they're told. So we're just trying to change that, Dan.
Appreciate it, Wendell. Keep us in the loop, okay?
Yeah, I'll do that, and you'd do well to get one of these guys on and have an interview with them, because they can tell you a heck of a lot more than the just a few points that I've touched on here.
I certainly will take it under advisement. Have a good one, Wendell.
Right, thank you.
902-405-6000 is the number, 902-405-6000. Let's see if we can squeeze one more in here before the break, and we welcome Sean to the program. Sean, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. How you doing?
Good. Your elbows up?
Oh, yeah, they're up. They're up and down, Dan. Dan, I just want to weigh in on this. With the last couple of callers that called and said, like, their elbows are still up and Carney's doing the right thing and all that, and saying how the American economy is being hurt and ours isn't. I don't know if you remember, I did call Todd and talk to him about this, but in the second quarter in the United States, their Q2 reported an economic growth of 3%, something that hasn't been done in decades.
Right.
Their economy grew by 3% in a quarter. Like that's never, like, ours hasn't grown in decades. You know what I mean? And it's declining every day if we go to the grocery store, as I'm sure you know. But here, Dan, here's the thing that I think really why the tariffs were dropped in Canada, or Canada dropped the tariffs against United States companies. I don't know why the media hasn't covered this either. But in July, so last month, the Ethics Committee got the disclosure of Mark Carney's investments, his shares and portfolio. Mm-hmm. And in that, there's over 560 companies, entities. These are massive companies: Walmart, Airbnb, Amazon, American Express, BlackRock, right? The list goes on. And of that 560 companies that this man is invested in, only 3 of them are Canadian.
Okay.
Right? So where do we, like, again, I go back to my last call. I'm not getting upset, I'm just upset with this situation, because we look at the battery car mandate. Brookfield Management owns one of the biggest battery manufacturers in the world. I think it's the second biggest in the world. Yep. And now we're going to be forced to fund that company through a mandate by the Prime Minister of this country. Secondly, the man has 560 investments in
Sean
companies and global, and only 3 of them are Canadian. Dan, we have a very, very big problem in this country. And yes, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Did he not follow all the rules that are prescribed for somebody that becomes a leader in Canada? Did he thwart the rules? Did he not report all this to the ethics commissioner?
Yes, last month. Right? We couldn't get this stuff before. We couldn't get this stuff during the election. He hid it from us, because if Canadians knew that 557 companies that this man invested his own personal money into are American companies, I think Canadians' elbows would have been the other way around with Carney. Dan, do you not think that is an issue?
I know this was
the proper thing or not.
I know that this came up during the campaign, Sean, and I know that Mr. Poilievre and others tried to make hay with it, but he followed the rules.
Yes, I understand, but it was.
So can we criticize somebody? And I'm not trying to defend the Prime Minister, but can he criticize somebody who followed the rules that are prescribed to him?
I understand, Dan. I'm not here disputing the rules with you. I'm not. We got the disclosure 5-6 months after the election, and now it's coming out that this man owns 557 companies in the United States.
Doesn't own the companies. Walmart. He's invested in the companies. It's a big difference.
But that's what I mean. So if we put tariffs on American products and Walmart's selling these products, who's paying the tariffs?
Canadians
his
are.
company that he's invested in.
No.
Dan. Like, that's all I'm trying
Sean,
to say is Keith.
If the American tariffs are forward to, if we put counter tariffs on American products coming to the country, you and I are paying that. Mark Carney's not paying that.
I understand that, but we're paying them at Walmart when we go buy the product.
Right.
We're paying it at there, so that means the company has already paid it and they're passing it on to us.
Right. So how does the Prime Minister benefit from that?
How does the Prime Minister benefit from that?
Yeah.
Because his company doesn't have to pay tariffs at the border, which would bring down the stock prices of that company.
I'm confused.
Right?
Anyway, Sean, I don't want to cut you off, but we're just right up against the break, brother.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. Are your elbows up? The open hour continues after the news. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. Another 30 minutes of the midweek meltdown in front of us. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Got a bunch of emails during the last 60 minutes or so. I'll pass a few along to you now. This one from Karen says, my motto is you only die once. You live every day. I'm not letting something that's bigger than me dictate what I do to in my life. I want to experience as much as I can while I can. I've been to the U.S. many times. My next bucket list is the Grand Canyon. I'm 62 years old, not depriving myself of anything. If you think that makes me unpatriotic, so be it. It's my life. It's more than half over, and nobody has the right to judge me. And again, that one is from Karen. Another email. This one comes to us from Jennifer, who says, absolutely, my elbows are still up, as should every loyal and proud Canadian. The elbows up is best exercised as a collective. It doesn't matter that the government took off retaliatory tariffs. Collectively, if we avoid buying American products and traveling there, that's the best form of elbows up, and it's working, so we don't need to keep it up. Orange juice sales of Florida-based Tropicana historically down by a lot, she says. Oasis and Doyle Canadian products source their citrus ingredients from non-U.S. countries. Vehicle imports from Mexico also exceeding U.S. vehicle imports in the month of June, according to Jennifer. I absolutely will continue to look at where a product is made and avoid it. If it's American, find a replacement if possible. And yes, I will avoid vacationing there. In fact, we had planned to go to Boston this past summer, but nope. I don't have a good opinion of Canadians who do vacation there. She says, keep the elbows up collectively. And that is from Jennifer. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. We welcome Joseph to the program. Joseph, how are you?
I'm very well, Dan. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
Good. Yes, my elbows are still up, and actually they've been up for quite a while. I think we have to remember how this started, the elbows up initiative started, and it really was when Trump shared his thoughts about Canada and becoming a 51st state, making derogatory comments about our country. And so the elbows up was actually a citizen-led initiative, and I think the government just tagged on to it, thinking that it was a great initiative.
I think it came from Wab Kinew, didn't it? Didn't the Premier of Manitoba do it? And then it was the comedian on Saturday Night Live, Mike Myers did it on national or on U.S. TV.
That's right. Yes, I think it was Wab Kinew. Yeah, me personally, we do continue to just buy non-U.S. goods. And we used to go down to the States often, and we've stopped doing that. I just want to comment on the email from the woman who said, it's my life,
yep.
That kind of stuff. And while right now it may not impact your life very much. I mean, obviously, if there's tariffs, it's going to impact everybody in some small way. But, if we allow things like this to continue and it escalates, and what if Trump decides, you know what, I do want Canada, then what? Right? Now it affects your life, and what are you going to do?
Right, absolutely.
So I believe it's more of a personal choice. I don't basing my actions on what the government is doing because they have a lot more information than I do. I'm just going to do my part, I can tell you I'm still very PO'd with Trump for his comments. They're so disrespectful to us after we've been allies for so long. Right? So that's my point.
Appreciate it, Joe.
Thank you.
That is 902-405-6000. 902-405-6000 is the number. I don't think many Canadians are keeping their elbows up and have any disregard for American people in general. I think that this is purely aimed at the current administration, and I know that many Americans have come north of the border this summer and have spent some time here. I think the tourism numbers, when we get them this year, are going to be big, not only from the United States, but from people that aren't traveling south of the border and are coming here. I've heard numbers that were quite large this year from Canadian visitors that have decided to come to Halifax instead of doing their regular trips to Florida or whatever it is that they're going. Obviously, if we don't travel south of the border, and I've seen numbers and heard numbers, like up to 40, 50, 60% down, particularly in the state of Maine. I know that hurts the operators there, but really as a consumer, it's really the only way we can put pressure on governments is to be very thrifty with our money. And sometimes governments will only act when it comes to money. If this U.S. administration does, well, I would imagine, will be left up in the air for history to decide if it did or not. 902-405-6000. We go to the line. We welcome Chris to the program. Chris, how are you?
Not bad. Good afternoon, Dan.
Your elbows up, Chris?
Well, if you mean supporting Canadian business and industry, then I guess you'd have to say they are. But this is nothing new for me, and it's not new for a lot of people I know because the businesses that I've had in the past, I depended on Nova Scotians, Haligonians, and Canadians in general for my business. Mm-hmm. So I tried to reciprocate by buying my goods and services whenever possible from Canadian businesses, Nova Scotian businesses first, of course. But let's not forget that there's a whole lot of Canadians, an awful lot of Canadians and Canadian businesses that depend on importing and reselling Canadian or American-made goods for their business.
Right.
So by being elbows up as such, we're also affecting to a certain degree a lot of those people as well. And a lot of people don't think of that because once these goods pass across the American-Canadian border, they're dealt with Canadian workers. So you understand what I'm getting at.
Yeah, raw material out of the United States and manufacturing or putting stuff together here.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of that. There's a lot of jobs here in Canada that depend on the American goods. But you're absolutely right. It was Wab Kinew that basically coined the Gordie Howe phrase, I guess, of elbows up, and Carney plagiarized it, if you want to call it that, for his own campaign running. Of course, he's not new to plagiarism anyway. But I think that, first of all, I'll ask you a quick question.
Sure.
Who installed these counter tariffs on the U.S. goods in the first place?
But would have been the last government, right?
Carney government.
No, I think some of them were the Trudeau government.
Well, there might have been, but Carney is given all the credit for taking these off. But in fact, I'm sure that it was his government that basically announced retaliatory tariffs. I remember the tune of $50 billion worth of goods coming in from the States would be counter-tariffed and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it was either the end of the Trudeau government or the beginning of the Carney government, but it was certainly the Liberal government that did it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they never should have been. I mean, I think you're in agreement with this as well. They never should have been put in place originally anyway, because it really, I don't think it did anything to hurt the United States, especially if Sean's comments earlier are correct about the 3.3 or 3.2% increase.
Well, you know what, and I in numbers, you well know this, Chris. Numbers are numbers, and you can manipulate numbers how you look. And
you sure can.
The American economy may have seen an increase of 3%, but how much of that is coming from tariff money? And how much of that is American consumers paying that extra tariff money on goods that they normally would buy?
That was yes, you're absolutely right. That was going to be going to be my next point.
Right.
And it seems that so many people, Americans in particular, nothing against the Americans, but some of them don't seem all that financially bright to me because they're the ones paying these things. It's a tax on your own people, for God's sake. And so many people don't see it. And how the government in the United States, the Trump government and the administration, how they can keep feeding this line to the people, and the people keep believing it. I mean, it's totally ridiculous. You know yourself that with these retaliatory tariffs, it was just a tax as such, a tax on Canadians.
Yep.
But I think we've got to look at. I didn't vote for Carney, and I didn't vote for Trudeau either. But I was quite willing, as I said on Todd's show early on after he had formed government, that I was quite willing to give him a chance without berating him, give him a chance to get his feet wet on the job and see what he can do. Well, I'm very disappointed. And in my mind, he's been a complete failure. He's gotten us nothing in the way of concessions from the United States. And I will admit, I'll be the first to admit, that Donald Trump is a hard person to get concessions from because he could change his mind tomorrow and you don't have him anymore.
Yep.
I mean, we all get that.
Nobody's got a concession from him, have they?
Pardon?
Really? No, nobody that has inked a deal with the President of the United States has got a concession from Donald Trump.
Well, I'm not up on exactly what the Europeans, Britain, and these companies.
Well, the UK signed a deal with I think it was 15%. Japan signed a deal with a 15% tariff, and they were asking for that. Yeah, okay, that's a good.
Yeah.
It's only 15%, right? Instead of the 30 or the 35 that he had on there. But I don't, and I stand to be corrected, but I don't think anybody that has signed a current trade deal with Trump 2.0 has got a concession from the president.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on that. But of course, you must admit as well that governments do this. Businesses do it to a certain degree as well, but governments do this. And one of the worst offenders, of course, locally is our municipal government, where they'll come out and they'll threaten you with, and I call it a threat, with a certain percentage of increase, be it property taxes or income taxes.
Every time they do the budget, right? We get this. You're going to get us 7%, 8%, and then they find a bunch of savings. Right.
Oh, they roll their sleeves up and they work really hard and they burn that midnight oil and they deliberate our budget. BS. And they come up with, look, we were so good. Look at what we did. It's only 6.3%. People wipe their brow and think, oh, what a sigh of relief coming up from the HRM taxpayer. You know, it could have been worse. Well, that's a bunch of crap, Todd, because they can do better. All governments can do better. But you're right in that that's the tactic Trump has used, and it has worked.
Right.
But people should really look at what's going on here. Carney has spent more time out of Canada than Trudeau ever did, I think, and in the same period of time. And he's great at spending our money and committing money that we don't have. And he's on track to run the biggest deficit in Canadian history. We should be very, very, very concerned about that. More concerned about that than these Trump tariffs, in my opinion.
Chris, as always, a pleasure, and I still think you should run for office.
Well, why don't you and I sit down and have coffee, and maybe you can convince me.
Fair enough. All right, man, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
902-405-6000. In case you're curious what we're talking about, back on Monday, Chris was taking counselors, as he normally does, to task, and that's fantastic. And I said, well, I expect to see you on the ballot, and some people took that the wrong way to suggest I was being condescending. I wasn't. Chris is an engaged guy, and he's a smart guy, and he is plugged in even more than I am with what's going on in the municipality. And what a better person to represent a constituency. That's all I was getting at. Got to stop, take another break. Are your elbows up? 902-405-6000 is the number. We're back in minutes.
X.
All right, just a few minutes left here in the open hour. 902-405-6000 is the number. Let's get to the phones and welcome Rod to the show. Rod, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, as one caller questioned, Trudeau put the retaliatory tariffs on first.
Yep.
And Carney blew his chance of getting favor with the citizens of Canada by not taking them off when he first got elected. He waited this long to take them off. So he was just putting another tax on the Canadian citizens from the January right on through till now. We've just been paying an extra tax.
Right.
And that's all a tariff is an extra tax on the Canadian consumer.
Absolutely.
Anything you buy that has a tariff onto it is just another tax under a different name.
You got it. We
got we got enough taxes. I mean, everyone's all great. He reduced the carbon tax to zero, but the tariffs are cost us just as much money as the carbon tax.
On certain things, yeah, absolutely, you're correct. Yep.
Well, I mean, there was stuff that has a tariff onto it. I know people's incomes, the money ain't going as far as it used to, and a lot of it's from tariffs and inflation and things that he hasn't really taken the lead on the reins, or a good hold on the reins to help the Canadian citizens.
Right.
That being said on that part, the other aspect is, do you know what happened at Cole Harbour Place Monday night? That the mayor and Trish Purdy.
I did hear something about that. There was a protest or something that happened, and it ended the meeting early, right?
Well, they had a town hall meeting, and then they went sideways, and the mayor and Trish Purdy had to be escorted out of there by the police. I never heard too much about it. I was wondering if you knew anything that happened, or what was the cause of it.
That's really all that I heard, was that there was some kind of protest or something that happened there, and it ended with the police involvement. That's all I've heard.
Yeah, what I heard was that the mayor had to be escorted out. The mayor, I think, and Trish Purdy had to be escorted out by the police.
Well, maybe one of them's listening, and they can enlighten us a little bit, Rod. That's really all I've heard.
Well, I thought that maybe that Chris fella knew, but I couldn't get it. Wasn't in the queue before him because he seems to be plugged in. I just was curious about that too, because my wife was asking. I just didn't know what was going on because I didn't hear nothing. But as far as Carney in the retaliatory tariffs and stuff, he dropped the ball on that by saving the Canadian taxpayers and Canadian citizens money. He should have done that a long time ago.
Rod, appreciate the call, sir.
Thank you.
902-405-6000. Let's get Barry on the air. Barry, how are you?
Oh, not bad. Elbows up, definitely all the way. GM, Ford, and whatever they call Chrysler now are all forecasted multi-billion-dollar losses at the end of the year. You can go company after company. As Newsom said, the only chance the United States to stay a democracy instead of going is for the midterms. And good word, Iowa just put a Democrat in the Senate. Iowa, Trump won by 12 points. The candidate against her lost by 12 points. So if the Democrats get control, it could, that's the only way to stop Trump. And this is and if people lose, it's a sad thing, but if people lose jobs and suffer, and they figure that their fearless leader, is the cause of it, they'll become disenchanted with them. I mean, right now it's scary because you go to church and they're saying, "Hey, look what Graham said when Trump got inaugurated. Look what God has given us." So that's just, when people stop that foolishness, it can change, and America can come back to being our friend again.
I think it's going to take some time, Barry. I think that there's a lot of people with a lot of hurt feelings up here.
Yeah, but that's a man. I mean, it's not just him. It was what was the Republican Party. Now it's just MAGA. But there's still as many people, good people. I've always traveled to the States. There are lots of good people, but this is just, it's a regime, and hopefully it'll be stopped. If not, and he gets through, it's going to be a really, really scary thing. But in Iowa, they just lost their supermajority that the Republicans have because of this loss of the seat. So, you can take away their power. The vote is powerful.
It is. Barry, appreciate it, sir. And I appreciate each and every one of you for dialing the numbers and joining the show and taking part in the conversation. You make my day every day that you go. A couple of emails I want to read very quickly. Sometimes I get accused of not reading emails, so I'm going to read a couple here. It says, "Hey, Dan, your previous caller was seriously misinformed. I have relatives in Mexico. They would like to know where these state-owned farms with slaves are in the country. He made that up. My elbows are up. My enthusiasm is high, and I will push back on anyone that knocks our country or our leaders. At this time, to put our differences aside and stand united, there are far too many foreign actors out there trying to hurt our country," and that is Phil from Berwick. And this from Dawn. Dawn says, "Consumers and others were stocking up on products knowing the tariffs were coming. That's why the economy increased in the first quarter." And he said that caller Sean was trying to mislead. And this is from Tim. It says, "Way back when the tariff issue started, I was flabbergasted that Canadian politicians and Todd was supporting the notion of putting tariffs on American goods. First, Why would you further penalize your own companies and citizens, increasing costs to make 0 sense? Second, let Trump impose tariffs and raise the prices for U.S. citizens. Eventually, they'll say hell no. Third, if Ford was correct to suggest imposing an export tax on our energy to the U.S., since we provide the largest import of oil, gas, and power there by far, the notion of imposing tariffs is laughable. And that is from Tom. Thank you to you all for joining the program today. It's more fun every day. I really enjoy listening to you and getting your opinions. Thanks to Vanessa Vananez on the other side of the glass for keeping things orderly as much as possible. Busy show for you planned tomorrow. Make sure you make some time for us. Until then, everybody, be well and be kind to one another.